Everyone, I'm going to try to record this PowerPoint. I've never done this before, so we'll see if it works. So I uploaded the elements of poetry, and I tried previously to make a video by Wednesday, so my sincere apologies for not having it by then. I will extend the deadline through the weekend for the poetry assignment so that you have a chance to look at this video and maybe update your own journal if you happen to make connections that you didn't make because you've watched this video. So anyway, looking at a poem. Let's start with Shelley's Ozymandias, very famous poem. And what I want you to do is just let the language wash over you initially, so I'll read it out loud. I met a traveler from an antique land who said two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of the colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Now, when you encounter a poem and you read it a couple times and you try to get the story of the poem, you try to get the overall picture of the poem, it's helpful to go through the elements to unpack it and to try to see it as a series of fragments, perhaps, that you can then put together in different ways. Different ways to make meaning. So let's start with the tone and the speaker of the poem. Who is speaking this poem? Well, it opens by saying, I met an ancient traveler, or an antique traveler. So the speaker of the poem is someone who's retelling a story that was told to him about something. And to understand what's going on, you have to know who is Ozymandias. You have to know the relationship between the speaker, the I, and Ozymandias. And then other ways of looking at it. If the poem were a color, what color would it be? So let's kind of look back at the poem and say, okay, I met a traveler who said, two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. So you have the speaker is retelling a story of someone who traveled in the desert, who saw this statue. And so it's in a way twice removed from the actual statue. And what is this statue? Well, it's a statue of Ozymandias, but it's not a statue anymore. It's trunkless legs of stone. So if you think about it, it's about this statue that used to be enormous that's now a wreck. It's a colossal wreck if you look at the bottom. It has not held up over time. It's wasted away. It's eroded. When I imagine this, I imagine that it used to be at the front of this massive palace or structure, and now it's basically just a wasteland, a desert. Nothing's there. And so what is the tone? Well, the tone here, you get through a lot of the language and a lot of the imagery. Cold command, sneer, wrinkled lip, desert, boundless and bare, lone and level. So I think it's very chilling, very isolated, very remote, very kind of existential, if you will. So what are some of the most important images? And again, what you want to do is you want to go back to the poem and you want to go back to the actual language. And so what gives us visual imagery? What gives us auditory and kinesthetic things we can touch and feel? So going back to the poem again, I would say some things that really give me a visual sense of it. Two vast and trunkless legs. Whoops. Sneer of cold command, I can see that. I can see the idea of a boundless and bare colossal wreck. What can I feel? Well, sand is such a very tactile thing. This idea of a desert that's full of sand that has this stone coming out of it. I can't really smell anything, but I imagine like the idea of around the decay, this idea of just staleness, of lifelessness. Is there a single dominant image? Well, the dominant image for me would be the two vast trunkless legs that are just there, like a decapitated, legs without a body. And what does that evoke? And again, looking at the diction, words like visage, trunkless legs, sneer of cold command, colossal wreck, hand that mocked them, heart that fed. They certainly have seeds of larger meanings. All of these, kind of have to do with a sense of bold pride that has been conquered, a sense of greatness that has fallen. And then, looking at the syntax, what is the punctuation? What patterns are involved? What can be done with that to make meaning of the poem? So if you want to just jump back to the poem again, let's see. What we see is, and you might think that this is being too picky, but I think it's really cool. You see a colon here on the second line. You see another colon here, another colon here. What does a colon do in punctuation? It makes you pause, and then it makes you combine two things into one sentence. And so why all these colons? I would say that it's about stopping in your tracks and looking at something. Why are there quotes around, my name is Ozymandias, look at my works, ye mighty in despair? Well, that's what the plaque says, and yet what you're looking at is a wreck, a wasteland. So it's huge irony going on there. Now the rhyme scheme, it's always important to identify a rhyme scheme, and then the so what does rhyme do? So jumping back again. Land, sand, command. And then you have stone, frown. You have appear, despair, bear. You have decay and away. So throughout you have these end-line rhyme schemes that are causing us to get into a rhythm and get into a pattern, making the words connected in certain ways. And then what's really cool in this poem is all of what's called the alliteration and allusion, all of the within the lines, the way in which the same sound is repeated, sorry. So just listen to some of the S sounds in the second line. Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand half sunk the shattered visage who lies, whose frown. Why all these S sounds? S, to me, it's the wind blowing and the sand blowing around. And that's not coincidental. That's a sound imagery that just hits you over the head. And then the figurative, again, going with the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. If you think about the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, this ruler who clearly had a huge ego and was probably a very cruel tyrant over his people, now so confident that he would be leaving a legacy that would last forever, has this ironic, pathetic gesture that time has ravaged. Now with structure, you count the lines in the poem, you look at the rhyme scheme, you look at if there's some sort of beginning, middle, and end, just like with a story. Remember there's the exposition, the conflict, the climax, and then the resolution. With a poem, similarly, if it's telling a story, think about the way it opens, the way it works in the middle, and the way it ends. And is there a story being told? Are there parts of the poem that you can identify? And then the theme is, just like with fiction, it's the granddaddy. It connects it all together. And what you do is you look at what you found looking at the parts and figure out which ones most resonate with the theme. So as I talked about before, this is a poem that has really dominant sound images. It also has very stunning visual images, and the tone is very clear in it. And you might want to point to those things when unpacking the poem that you're going to work on. All right, well, I hope that helped, and I wish you all great luck with your first assignment.